Okay.
Sorry. Okay. We can turn down or off the aircon, yeah. Okay, guys. I think we need to start. Thanks everybody for coming to this Saturday meeting. Unfortunately, Marianne's not here. We're very lucky to have today a team from woza, which is a group of academics and artists from a number of different disciplines who have been working together in community projects with videos looking around TB, but not teaching people about TB. But I'll let them explain to you what the whole setup is. It's a really interesting and engaging project, and it's grown from something that was a sort of PhD exercise into an organization. So this is Anastasia, and then there's Ed and Ben. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for inviting us, Emma. I'm used to. I'll let you know. It's up to you. It's fine like this, right? Yeah. So I'm used to giving this talk mostly to people that I know, so I don't always give time to introduce myself. But I'm Anastasia. I'm a junior research fellow at the IDM, and so I work for the molecular microbacteriology research unit, and so I do basic TB research in my day job. This is Ed. He's a conceptual visual artist, South African, and Bianca, who's our anthropology PhD student, and then Digby Warner at the back, who I thought I'd introduce because when he gave this, what inspired giving this talk here was we did a talk at the IDM that Emma and Marianne saw, and when Digby introduced me as my PhD supervisor and my current supervisor, line manager, and he said I never finish anything, except never dedicated myself enough to start projects and I don't finish them, except this project. I was quite grumpy about it. I was like, thanks, Digby. But it's actually, I just wanted to thank him and acknowledge his role in the project. He's actually not going to speak today, but it's incredibly valuable to have someone senior to bounce ideas off and give oversight, and that is really Digby's role in the project. And I think we undervalue that in this context. It's really, really amazing to have someone senior that supports you in doing something that you're passionate about and giving me the space in my career to actually do this. So yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge him and thank him for that. And you can ask him about some questions about how difficult that can be sometimes. So what we're going to do today is Ed and I are sort of going to tag team around the background of the project, what it is, how it develops, how it grew. We're going to try and do that in 25 minutes and then show you 5 to 6 minutes of one of the films that we made. And then Bianca's going to talk about some of her research that she's done as an anthropology PhD student that's coming to completion. She's going to submit a thesis definitely in April. Yes. Okay, so woza is a project. I'll tell you a little bit about the background. It started literally in an informal conversation between Ed and I where I was frustrated that I was working in the labs on TB. We all know it's a big problem in South Africa, and had never really engaged with any TB patients, and this was frustrating me, and I got a little bit of, and I said to Ed, can't we do a project? And I collaborated with an organization called Become Youth to do a health workshop, and I said to Ed, I knew he had lots of film experience, and I said, oh, can't we film the scientists talking? And he said that would be really boring, rather film the youth after you've given the presentation and see what they think about TB and what their experiences of TB are. And we did that. That was seed funding from the MMRU generously, and we made a short pilot documentary which is available on the website. And that then became pilot data to apply for a Wellcome Trust International Engagement Award, which really allowed us to formulate the project in a way where we're not making the films. And this will become clearer as we talk about how the project works, where learners from Khayelitsha actually make the films themselves. And this is also very different to other participatory media projects where often participants will get a camera and put together some footage, but there will be an external professional editor that actually edits the films. In this project, the kids edit, the learners edit their own films. And so they also learn to use some very complicated industry scale editing software, which me with a PhD, actually, I can't even use. And so I think it's a phenomenal thing to accomplish that learners who have never even used an Apple Mac computer end up editing these films in a 2 to 3 week period. And so that's the basis of the project, and it'll become a bit clearer. Maybe sounds a bit frenetic now. And so we just want to always acknowledge at the start of the talk people that collaborate with us and our funders. We work a lot with the Company Youth, and we get a lot of institutional support from IDM and CIDRI and the MMRU, and then we're funded by the National Research Foundation and the Wellcome Trust. And we also have a lot of people in this environment that help us in workshops and give up their time on Saturdays and other times, and we just want to say thank you to all of them. So what is a woza. This is our last figure. It's a little bit out of date. We need to make a new one. But the core part of their woza is the workshop program. And this was established in 2014. And I'll tell you exactly how that runs now. I should start my timer. Sorry. And this is how the project really started. And so we've enrolled 65 learners to date. We have annual screenings, we have biomedical research workshops, and we've got quite a good social media presence, and that's our core form of dissemination. We've got about 30,000 followers on Facebook. And so how does this actually work? So it starts off with recruitment, which is a screening at the SCB Business Center in Khayelitsha. We recruit learners from Ikamva Youth, which I don't know if anyone's heard about, but they're a great organization. They do extracurricular tutoring for learners. They've got multiple branches in Cape Town. But what's amazing about them is they don't take the most talented or academically gifted learners. Anyone can join Ikamva Youth. So that's learners that want to better themselves, that want to improve their marks. And we really like this approach because you never know what someone's potential is until you've given them an opportunity. And so what we do is in about April, we do a screening of the previous year's films, and this also acts as a recruitment session to recruit a new cohort of learners, and we present about the project. We then move into a science workshops phase, and so this is also really important to make the point. This project's not about health information. This project is about engagement with biomedical research, because there's a lot of organizations that do promotion of health information really well, and we didn't want to replicate that because we also don't know how to do that. So we have a series of science workshops, which I hold here at the IDM. They cover topics like what is TB and what are the basics of research. So learners do acute experiments where they get to plate their microbiome and they learn about a hypothesis and results and how to interpret those results. And they do some experiments in the lab. They learn about the biomedicine of TB that's caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis. And the microbiome is always quite a hit for learners to see the bacteria all over their bodies. We then do a TB drug discovery workshop, and so the idea here is that there are research groups based at UCT and the IDM that are world leaders in some of this research, and so to expose the learners to this, to basically say that Cape Town is teaching the world about TB as well. And so the MMRU does the drug discovery workshop, and we do a MIC plate and a disc diffusion assay. SATFI then runs a TB vaccinology workshop, and we have people that are sort of junior and senior that run these workshops. And then we go into a clinical trials workshop, which is held at the Sidri Africa clinical site in Khayelitsha. And here we do a mock clinical trial where learners are randomized to either Koch or Diet Koch. And we see which makes them perform better on a math test. And this is also always a hit, and it really starts to make people understand some of the principles and issues around clinical trials. And we also learn a lot about people's perspectives. So in 1 year, we asked the group if they would join a clinical trial. And they said they would join a clinical trial for a drug, but not for a vaccine. Because they felt if they were already sick, it was worth taking that risk, but they wouldn't join a trial for a vaccine. So that was quite an interesting perspective. And then at the end of the project, we do design a research question. And so we ask the groups, once they've learned all about TB biomedical research, if they could research something about TB, what would they research? And this traditional medicine question often comes up, but we also get lots of other interesting research questions. We then move into the media production phase, which Ed will talk a little bit more about.
Okay, so during the science workshops, we started introducing cameras, basic cameras, and we've actually now completely changed it to a much smaller and more powerful package, which we have here. And so the learners start filming around the labs and around, like taking cameras home and filming family members and learning. In the beginning, it's obviously upside down and skew and whatever. So that initial phase is pretty much a learning kind of thing. And then we go into kind of media production where we do proper shoot days, and we go wherever the learners want to film. I think they want to have a starting point of the film, and we go into areas and people start doing interviews, and we do proper camera work. We have people that supervise, like to see the cameras, and that's where a lot of the camera training happens as well. After that, so let me just get through these quickly. So there's a lot of stuff that has to happen there, and a lot of new things that learners have to consider, like consent, all this kind of stuff, like actually making sure people are comfortable that are being filmed. So there's a whole lot of other skills that kind of come with this. Obviously, not just sticking cameras at people's faces, especially with strangers. And then we move into a kind of series of media workshops. As Tash said, like miraculously, learners make films and high-end video editing software in like 2 to 3 weeks, which is an absolute lie. We are reliant on school holidays because obviously that's the only time we have on Saturday. So the science workshop happened in this Saturday science workshops. We kind of have them on Saturdays before, and then we go to school holidays in the winter, and we take 2 weeks and then push really hard in training, editing, and shooting. And we do the shoot days and the editing days in that, and we shoot and edit as it goes along. It's a very organic process. People do what they want. We don't really know what direction the film's taking. We don't guide it. We guide it the way we can, but we don't dictate. That's the wrong word. Prescribe what the outcome would be. And often Tash and I, also because of the language barrier, we don't know what these films are about right until they're finished editing the films and the translation starts happening. So it's quite nice that the kind of the storytelling is completely like on the groups that like are making the story, and it changes. And sometimes it's like, can you tell me what you're doing? No, I'm not telling. Okay. So it is quite intensive. But then after this like really intense workshops, we kind of usually do a few Saturdays again, and we kind of try and finish because shoot maybe some people need some more shots. So it's a long-term thing, which is a very important thing. And part of this project is that it kind of is like we end up having a year-long kind of very slow process. After the intensity of that, we kind of ask, like, how much people finish, people can't make it, so it becomes, okay, some people can come, and by the end of it, we finish basically at the end of the year when we recruit, like so then we do the recruitment of new students, we also do the screening, and that's the close for the last. So it's pretty much a year-long program.
Maybe just to add, we also thought it was very important to have high quality equipment so that the films are very high quality. So this is not like grainy, upside down footage. And so that we have to justify quite a lot because we need a lot of funding to do that. So the learners get soft skills, like how to interview people, how to approach someone, how to manage your time, but they also learn these really intense film technical skills and are also exposed to a professional artistic environment, which is quite nice. Recording studio, we got to record an a cappella group.
I mean, this kind of thing, we always try and accommodate what is there and what we can do also with like, friends. For instance, this was like one group had an a cappella group, but there wasn't a recording. And often people just record with the camera and it's often good enough. But I think there was a question asked, we said, yeah, we do have a friend that has a sound booth just for voiceovers. We could just ask, and it was like a morning and we quickly did it. We actually did a lot of tracks, like 10 tracks, and like just one go each. And then all of a sudden there's a, this CD available that a cappella group that takes off, and then as exchanged and it allows the licensing for the music to the group who wants to use it. But we'll speak a bit more about the music just now.
Yeah, and then another point just to make before we move on to the next, how the project has grown, is that what we started doing is inviting a certain proportion of learners to participate for a second year. And so I guess this is really important. We engage also conceptually, we engage with a small group of learners. So we engage with 12 to 15 learners per year. And that also becomes difficult to justify because you're getting decent amounts of funding for quite a small group. And we've sort of had to say, well, that's our approach. We believe in intensively engaging a small group of learners rather than applying a generic approach to large groups, because we think that's the kind of engagement that's actually going to change things and increase knowledge. So we engage a small group quite intensively. And so that's the core workshop program that runs every year out of the IDM and will continue thanks to a new NRF grant running for another 3 years. And we've, in the last 2 years, really had to be lucky enough, but also had to branch out to raise additional funding. And so the one thing that we did was a sexualities research project. This really grew out of a relationship with Bianca's co-supervisor, Dr. Nwazi Mkwanazi from WISA at WITS. And what we did was we applied for what we called it the World Sexuality Project. It was a Wellcome Trustee Award in the Social Sciences and Humanities. It was the first in Africa. And the idea was to use there was a model to do anthropological research around contemporary notions of sexuality and sexual health, and how this influences sexual health programs. It was a seed award, so we were just sort of testing it out. And what we did was we had a symposium in Joburg, and we tried to make this really multidisciplinary. So we had artists, I've got some pictures. So we had artists and writers, activists. We tried to get some high flyers. So we had Didizile Zamini, who's just won a prize. We had Ishta Lakhani and Pierre DeFoss doing a plenary talk, Tiffany Mugo, and there were some biomedical researchers, Jan Foss-Morkay, and Amir Shrifi from MSA. So the idea was to get people from different disciplines talking and seeing what we could come up with around sexual health. And this was in prep for a workshop period that we had. The other thing to mention is that the woza learners presented their films, because one learner group made a film about gay women in Khayelitsha, and that was used as pilot data to actually get that grant. And so sometimes we actually can't show it in Khayelitsha because we're worried about the safety of the women. So it's okay to show in Joburg because probably no one knows them, but not in Khayelitsha. And so the other thing we did was we had a performance evening, so to try and take this work outside of the academic context and into contemporary culture. And we also had performers that do a lot of work around sexuality, and this was at the Kalashnikov Gallery in Joburg. So Lilo performed, Kofi, and then MX Blaz is getting very famous at the moment. So that was quite nice to make it a bit more contemporary and youth focused, and to get young people who are not in research, who are not in academia, thinking about and talking about these issues. So the other project that we're busy running at the moment, the other arm of the project, is very creatively named the Drug Resistance TV Musician MSF collaboration. Also, woza is an anagram, so it's Ed, Herman, Warner, Olivia, Zanele, Anastasia, and that was people who started. This project grew out of sort of a need to raise funding, as they always do, but also because when we started, learners need to edit to music, and the learners were choosing all this popular, quite famous music, and we all of a sudden realized we might have a problem because we don't have the rights to the music. So Ed came up with a great idea and said, okay, can't we ask learners if their friends in their neighborhoods are making music already, and if they would donate the music to the project, and that sort of worked very well. But then what started happening is the musicians saw the learners had cameras and started asking us to make music videos, and we were like, that would be great, but it's time. So we wrote a grant to the Wellcome Trust, and the idea of this grant is to bring survivors of drug-resistant TB, who are part of MSF-supported treatment adherence groups. They're actually virtual groups, so no one ever meets. It's all over cell phone and stuff, together with Khayelitsha-based musicians, and workshop and hope that the experience of having and surviving drug-resistant TB inspires the production of music videos. And so it's important to note here that the storytelling is not meant to be literal. So it's not going to be a music video with someone taking some pills and how difficult that was. But it's the story of going through, because I think what we're starting to see is having, and I'm sure a lot of people here know this, but having drug-resistant TB is actually a really traumatic process. It's a very difficult process, and we can see that the participants of this project are very different to the incumbent youth learners, and it's actually been quite a challenge to engage them. And so we shot a music video on a Saturday afternoon just to see that we could actually make a music video, and this is also pilot data. And these are some of the musicians that we are currently working with. And so, yeah, if anyone's interested, the music video is online. And then the third arm, but not the final arm, but we need to update the figure, is Bianca's work, and she's going to tell you about that. And so we've realized that we can do quite a bit of engaged scholarship around this work, and so we were very lucky to get Bianca as our anthropologist on the team, and she's studying how knowledge is configured and produced within the project, and a little bit around the economies and politics of TB in Khayelitsha, and she's going to tell you a bit more about that. And then we also do an honors techniques in community techniques course as part of the IDI honors in community engagement. And I think this is maybe the only place in South Africa that is actually doing this. So we want to instill a sense of importance of this work and how to do it from a very, very young age. And we published 2 papers, which is great, especially for me, because I don't publish a lot. And then 2 new things that we've done sort of this year is we've got a diversity supplement on Ed's Wellcome Trust grant. And the idea here is, the question we always get asked is, what about capacity? How can this grow? How can this develop? What happens if you and Ed and Bianca decide to go and do different things? And so what we decided to do is try and train graduates of their woza projects to become leaders in the public engagement work. And so we're busy doing that with 2 learners, Alpha, who's an amazing cameraman, and so we're training him up on the camera work, and then Zondikazi, who's an excellent filmmaker, young filmmaker and producer. And so we spend a lot of intensive time job shadowing and training, and we're able to pay Alpha and Zondi, which is really great, so it's like a job for them. And then finally, the NRF grant is to do a schools program, and so the idea for this is to take the films that the learners have made and go to schools and use the films as a tool to stimulate discussion and debate around health issues in schools. And so that's going to start up within the next few months. I think the first thing we need to do is get ethics for that. And so that's happening. And this was also a suggestion that came from screenings in Khayelitsha where people saw the films and saw the discussion that was generated and said, you need to take this into schools. And so that's what we're going to try and do. And then I just put a heart to get involved if anybody is interested in getting involved. And also if you want to join our mailing list, please send me an email. And that's us. If you want to know any more about the project or see any more of the films, these are our social media. I'm going to show you one of the films. Thanks for coming. And then Bianca's going to talk about her work.
So just
email.
My email, I will write on the board.
Just pause this. Just before we screen this film, I mean, this film is like, we screen it because it's short and it's kind of like a more generic film. We have way more specialized films. Films like are kind of meant to be like based on TB as a basic TB, HIV co-infection or whatever. And it starts like that. But as Tash mentioned, like the film was made about LGBT rights in high school learners in Khayelitsha. Alpha was the cameraman that you saw there that also shot the music video there. Like him and his friend Paula made a film about mine workers and the struggle for getting Provident clients back from the government since '94 and even before that. And Sony Kaiser made a film about, now a second film about abuse, about gender-based violence and also bring it back to kind of disease and stuff like that. So people do quite specialized films. So this film in particular is one that a young group made that is kind of like a bit more, what's the word?
It's a bit more of an overview and it's sort of much more focused around TB. So the point about inviting learners back for a second year is what starts to happen is the film starts to become a lot more in-depth because there's not so much intimidation around being in the IDM or learning to use a new camera. And so very personal stories start to get told. So as Ed said, there's a story about a woman who we asked her, we were asking her about TB, and the story that came out was like basically a lifetime of sexual abuse and sexual violence. And then Alpha and his group wanted to make a film about his dad, and who was an ex-mine worker. And we were like, okay, this is linked to the silicosis case. That was our immediate thing. And what it actually turns out is that there is an entire other case that's happening in South Africa, and it's been publicized in the Daily Maverick, that a lawyer called Rosemary Hunter is leading. And this is about unclaimed benefits and how there's accusations of corruption, of big finance cancelling providence funds and stuff. And so it's not about TB, but what it makes one realize is that in this context, TB is not just about TB. TB is completely intersectional. It intersects with poverty, it intersects with violence, and all of that. And I think there's a lot of research to be done in the films because the films start to really, really show that it's a social disease, right? And so this is just a sort of overview film, but I really implore people to go and look on the website and see some of that.
Show the website just for that.
Yeah, we can show.
Believe the spirit. Nice vibe. Go real. Start the breath when you got it. Go on and find out if it's good. The hunt would be into me. My back trailing stuff to me. So I'm never backing down. I'm never backing down. I'm never backing down. I ain't gonna back down. I'm never playing. I think I'm a toy with whatever.
ubanayo ka usela okanye utshaya impawu zayo mhlawumbe umzekelo uyamila ebusuku yebo yana omnye uba nehlaba omnye uyakhohlela abile balele ebusuku so brother wami wena wayewiki like soloko emzimba esilenda kayilela bintu ngabantu abangomama abantwana bakuthi
kuyafasisa kakhulu kuthiwa ngoyipho ifumana kuqala okanye ngoyipho yiwo ababanayo wonke umntu nabani namhlanje
apha sendifike ngo-90 akuzange kubekho into eyenzekayo ukuthi oko sasebenzisa i-bucket system esayiwenza ngokuthi i-drains imdaka azilungiswa ezi drains i-TB ininzi apha kothi kamba nabantu aba-HIV akhonge yenzekwayo sebebheke ezikliniki abahoyeki.
The issue of pollution, pollution is a problem, but it's not the driver of TB. The driver of TB is people living in overcrowded conditions. And that's what living many people in small houses without good ventilation.
Wakula kakhulu ephethwe yi-TB ne-HIV ubhuti wathi ke ngo-2010 wathi ubhuti mane ngemsayinela for i-treatment yakhe ye-HIV ndahamba naye emsayinini athi ngoku zangazithi iipilisi zakhe wagula kakhulu njengoba wayegula kakhulu wabelele ebhedini iipilisi zininzi ebhedini singayazi thini uba akazithi iipilisi wena sisasemnika thina treatment.
HIV drives the risk for TB disease by weakening your immune system. And in South Africa, we tend to see 50-50%.
Ubhuti wabesegula kakhulu seyiluze nesayiti kuthiwa ubhuti wami uphethwe yi-meningitis ndamuhoya kuloo TB yakhe.
TB meningitis is when TB spreads from the lungs into the bloodstream, and then the TB bacteria spread to the lining of the brain, which is called the meninges.
So, into wayenza xa etyile ile nto iipilisi wayefika phaa endlini afike asheyikhe umbona uba nangoku ombathe ingubo uyasheyikha ngoba into yoba ngoku uyagula nyhani.
So ndabona banabheka emaXhoseni kaba kumaXhoseni ngevulana ndaya kwezi sibhedlele salapha esayithi akabonwa nto ndaye ndindahamba ndasuka ekhayelitsha esibhedlele bafumaniseka into waphande ne-TB kwisipayini.
We know that TB can affect the vertebral bodies of the spine, those are the bones in the back. And we call it vertebral TB because the TB then erodes into those bones, eats away at those bones. Then those bones can collapse, and then people can get deformities in their back, and then they get a crooked back, essentially from the TB, the vertebral TB or the TB of the spine.
Christ and our big ancestors standing up, we got the round, same long scriptures, who originally knew without asking me in the picture. Compare the Angelo Euro and see the bigger picture.
Into wayenza yena athathe iipilisi azifake phantsi komatrasi ndimane ndibuza utapura andizipilisa ntoni ezihle phantsi komatrasi athi hayi kuwe sasipilisi nje kodwa uthe xa segoduka aye kumamakhe wangona ke ngoku athi kumama wakhe athi uyagula ndihamba umasouth africa ndihamba zonke iilokishi kodwa babeyisifihlela thina kwiipilisi elalizibhaqile wasoleka naye. So mna ndathi brother wam TB ne-HIV.
Who is an angel and who is a demon? What do you believe in and what is your reason? I believe we all humans and we are connected. The truth is protected by merciless serpents who strike at our heels, immobilizing our progress. When I wrote this, I was deep in a state of limbo, sitting on the couch, staring outside my window, and all I saw was full of soul of misguided egos, control system, have soul max, ego. Look at the TV swing, teaching you how to teach you, teaching you how to smoke. Tell me what you got profile to inherit the lesson.
I think I'm an
example of a film. A lot of them are quite similar. What is TB? This was a bit of a personal story because it was Bongi's brother that passed away. So I'm going to introduce Bianca because this shows off some of the research that we're doing. And now that we're getting to the end of Bianca's PhD, I realize what a journey it's been. So I think it really represents ground level, like interdisciplinary research. Bianca's an anthropologist based at in a molecular biology lab. And that's again something that I really appreciate from Debbie because it's a bit crazy. How are we going to supervise an anthropologist? She's like, no, we'll do it, it'll be fine. And I think that really shows its bravery in terms of research, and it's the kind of thing that is needed to generate new knowledge and new cross the boundaries. And the first thing we had to learn is that anthropologists don't present with slides. And so what we do for Bianca's presentation is we just have some images of their woza project looping in the background. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Tash, for the introduction. And thank you for the invite. So I'm just going to jump straight into my presentation. I'd like to begin my presentation with a short reflection. Joyce is a mother of three that lives in the neighborhood of Makaza in the township of Khayelitsha in Cape Town. She lives in a small home with her brother, her 4-year-old son, and her mother who occasionally takes care of her. In 2009, Joyce found out that she was HIV positive after a short episode of illness. In 2013, she had a stroke that affected her mobility on the right side of her body. And in 2015, she was diagnosed with TB. This was a story told by 3 young girls, Zinhle, Zimkita, and Ondela, as learners participating in the woza project. We sat on the lawn in front of Joyce's home with our cameras in hand, and Joyce detailed her illness experiences through showing us numerous containers of her ARV treatment, an old packet of her TB treatment, and a small bag in which she kept her other medication. Led by the questions that the girls asked her, Joyce unpacked her illness narrative, punctuated by the recollections provided to us by her family and friends about how about their own experiences with TB and HIV, and how this had shaped their lives as a family. Later, crowding the small space of her veranda with our presence and camera equipment, we spent the afternoon listening to poignant recollections of how their illnesses had profoundly changed their lives. At the end of our visit, Joyce, together with one of her aunts, shared pictures from an old photo album showing images from before their illnesses, and they repeatedly stated, "We used to be so pretty." In this moment, accounts of treatment, CD4 counts, clinic visits, the side effects of their chronic medication, lack of employment, disability, and motherhood placed the girls right in the middle of the many intersections in Joyce's life and onto a complex local landscape of TB illness, where the biomedical aspects of the disease are constantly interacting with its social, economic, political, and historical dimensions. And with this, I introduce my work with woza. My study explored the different dynamics that shape understandings and experiences of TB within Khayelitsha. Using the woza project and its intersection of art, science, and youth education in interrogating TB, I looked at how the disease was framed by a community of TB scientists through the perspectives of young people and their interactions with community members, and through the lived experiences of individuals affected by TB within the township. I situated these within 3 themes: the politics of TB, the economy of TB, and the lived experience of TB. The politics of TB looks at the decisions around, the power dynamics within, and responses to the epidemic at a national, community, familial, and individual level, and gives a picture of the political landscape of the disease. The economy of TB explores the production and circulation of different kinds of knowledge around the disease and the economics of TB, and how these shape the different ways in which TB is being intervened. The lived experience of TB explores the narratives of particular community members that I encountered in my fieldwork, and that have suffered from TB, and how their narratives reveal the different kinds of care that shape experiences of this disease. And from this, my study looks at how the interplay between these 3 themes shapes how we come to understand the experience of TB within the country. My work has been an ethnographic exploration of TB through the woza project. where I embedded myself in, observed, and participated in the daily life and activities of the MMRU, followed the workings of their woza workshops, engaged in the lives and perspectives of the learners that participated in it, and encountered the experiences of community members within different neighborhoods within the township. I conducted focus group interviews, participant observation, and in-depth interviews, and many formal and informal conversations in between. In my presentation today, I focus on my experience with young people within the group and draw on my interactions with one group of learners and one community member with whom they worked. I use my presentation today to talk about the ways in which the young people in their woza project were challenged to engage with and develop perspectives about TB, and how they straddled the different aspects of TB through their documentary films, and how they highlighted the significance of young people's participation and activism for health issues within their communities. Here, their participation highlighted how the project is a transformative way of thinking and engaging with different issues around the disease in a manner that is collaborative, centered around social justice, and youth-driven. Deputy President David Mabuza, in his opening speech at the 5th National TB Conference, highlighted the power of young people as agents of change and as revolutionary ambassadors across society. And I tried to illustrate this here through two themes. The first theme is through the lens of the microscope. The project began with interactions with a community of TB scientists who explored TB from the perspective of microbacteriology, through the practices of TB science, and who facilitated a biomedical understanding of the disease and the political landscape in which it existed. Here, there was a project navigates a complex local landscape of infectious diseases through the lens of TB scientific research. It presents an opportunity to see how knowledge and responses to the disease are established through the practices of communities of TB scientists, and how they translate their work to communities of non-scientists as a particular way of knowing the disease. And the concepts that they present provide a way of seeing and understanding how biomedicine and its practices construct persons, patients, bodies, diseases, and human physiology in a particular way, and how this is translated into the policies and responses to the disease. But most importantly, it shows how the learners are not passive recipients of information within this process, but respond to it in particular ways. One group of learners, as the science workshops came to a conclusion, presented a research question that asked, why is there so much TB in informal settlements? And how can we reduce TB cases? And in asking this question, drawing on their experiences within their communities and interacting with a community of TB scientists, what was being highlighted was how the learners responded to the knowledge shared with them through the workshops, but also how they began to recognize the different politics around TB and the economy in which the disease exists. Zondigazi, Nandipa, and Nombulelo described TB in their neighborhood as being shaped by overcrowding, pollution, lack of access to clinics, and lack of care. And in this, they showed their perceptions of issues around lack of government involvement, issues around housing and sanitation within their communities, issues around care for TB-affected individuals, and issues around the disempowered experiences of TB sufferers. Their participation here allowed them to actively and interactively engage with and produce meanings together with the TB scientists and situate these within the broader political landscape of TB in the country. The second theme is through the lens of the camera. The lens of the camera speaks to the films produced within the project since its conception, and how they have continuously highlighted the role that the learners can and want to play as young people in their communities, documenting the experience of TB. The reflection that I provided in my introduction is from a shoot day that I participated in with 3 young girls from the project. Through the lens of the camera, they followed the daily life of their neighbor, Joyce, her disability, her co-infection with TB and HIV, unemployment, depression, rehabilitation, and struggles with chronic medication. And through this, they captured her lived experience with the disease. My own interactions with community members like Joyce revealed the varied experiences of the disease that showed what care looked like within families, within the clinic, through the medical system, and from the state, and how they navigated this from the point of their diagnosis and throughout their treatment journeys. Here, I'd like to share some quotes from a conversation that I had with Zimkita and Zinhle, as it was a participant, and how they understood TB in their community, and what they were trying to achieve through documenting Joyce's story. Zimkita started by saying, the way we saw the film was that it had to be something that someone could relate to, that when you watch it, they feel that there is something that has changed within them. And for that to happen, we needed it to be someone's story, because we believe that there are other people that are going through the same thing. So if someone can come and share their story, then at least other people will know that if I'm in a situation like this, at least I'm not alone. Zinhle added that. Another thing is that when watching the film, you could relate because you could see her, like her appearance, that she dresses like this, and that this is what TB has done to her. She had a stroke and it affected her life. And also, it was helpful for the scientists, to be honest, because we asked some of them that we were talking to, and they said that it was so funny that they have always been studying TB, but they don't know the patients that suffered from it, or their daily lives, or what is going on in their everyday. They read about it and know that this is what happens, but they don't know these people. That's one of the reasons we decided that we should base our film on one person, so that the scientists can learn that these are the things that are happening to the people out there. Zimkita ended the conversation by stating, when people are sick, they tend to keep it a secret, even when you can see that this person is really sick. And then other people start to talk and they just assume that you're suffering from HIV. So we just wanted people to be open about it and not to worry about what other people are going to say. When someone tells you their status, you should not look at them differently just because of that. Because it shouldn't be hard to say the word HIV. It shouldn't be hard to say the word TB, just pronouncing it. Because I remember when we did the interview with Joyce's aunt, one of the aunts whispered and said, now Joyce is like this. Yes, she is like this. When people talk about it like that, you can see that it's because of these people that there is still stigma around these things. And that's why they are still secrets. Interacting with Joyce and documenting her story highlighted the complexity of TB illness in the daily lives of TB sufferers and the very varied issues around care. The young people's use of film within the project therefore highlighted the educative and activist power of visual media and how its application can help interrogate issues concerning health and medicine. The work of the learners here began to function as a tool for awareness, a platform to highlight the stigmatizing and prejudicial images, a way of influencing and engaging with public perceptions of infectious diseases, and as a way of conveying the political struggles around the disease. Documenting these narratives, the young people in the project bear witness to social suffering. The way they frame these experiences with TB illness becomes an act of social justice by making visible the injustices that people who are TB affected endure. And in being members of these communities that they document, they write themselves into these stories and narratives through the way that they participate in the project and through how they reflect their understandings of TB in their films. As interviewees describe the impact the disease has had on their lives, the viewer is also provided with insight into the daily lives and lived realities of community members. By interspersing these interviews with scenes from the science workshops, the films highlight that in South Africa, TB, a biomedical problem in that it is caused by a bacterium and can be treated by antibiotics, is inextricably linked to the social conditions of the communities that it affects. In conclusion, there was a project, and all those that participate in it provides an interesting and interactive platform for engaging with the biomedical conceptions of TB, but also allows us to follow the conversations and discussions that emerge in between. A learner's simple question asking, why are people in informal settlements most affected by TB, opens up a discussion and interaction around the experiences of the disease that the learners present in their films, and how these intersect with the biology of the disease presented by the scientists. It highlights and interrogates the relationship, or lack thereof, between biomedical knowledge and practices, and the social experiences and understandings of TB illness. It allows us to see how these are interpreted by young people through art and film, and how these films interrogate and reflect the experiences and daily struggles of people affected by the disease. Anthropologist Susan Levine writes that understandings of illness cannot be reduced to what is seen under the microscope, and that there is a need in biomedicine to see beyond this. The work of the young people shows this, and how they imagine their worlds with the realities of TB. Using medicine, the humanities, and the arts, the project and its learners provide an alternative way to interact with and investigate local responses and perceptions to epidemics such as TB, and illness experiences within a local context. In a country where the majority of TB sufferers are Black, poor, and vulnerable to ill health, and those wearing lab coats are white, well-off, and healthy, a project such as woza makes it clear that illness is not merely accidental. Social context, environment, and circumstances shape the bodies that we have, and the bodies that we have shape our experiences of and in the world. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. I probably also should have said Bianca is also very brave to have come to a biomedical research institute. Yeah. So thank you for trusting us. Yeah, so that's pretty much an overview of the project.